Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining the channel today. I'm Dan, your host. Hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves. Today's topic is one that I have touched upon before, but I thought it necessary to revisit because there have been some new elements and bullet points to make that I had not thought of before. And in addition to that, there are links to the main topic at hand that I think are very important to discuss that I should not have left out before. So this is not a rehashing of the same video over. There's a lot more new to this topic. And so today's topic is, why are bands / artists front half of their discography better than the later ones or the second half? And are there any who buck that trend? Now, before we dive into that discussion, need to talk about some little background. This is something that's always been with me, probably since my teenage years, or at least early 20s. It's always been a part of, me thinking, why is that sort of thing, right? And so it's really come back to the fore about 3 years ago with me, as I remember getting my coffee and sitting down to watch one of my favorite YouTube channels about music. And the host there was talking about this band and that band and how they love, their later stuff and this other band. And it always seemed to be the case. So this is a host who, when it comes to rock music, the whole umbrella, they just seem to love everything. There's almost nothing that they don't like or love. But so that got me thinking about the discussion again, the topic at hand. And then even more recently, about 2 months or so ago, give or take, they did a Q&A where they did a short video saying, hey, give us your questions, and a week later we'll have a video and discuss and answer your questions. And in that video, someone commented below asking that very question: why are bands, artists, etc. front half better, and are there any who buck the trend? And I commented back to that gentleman saying, you're barking up the wrong tree, because the host here and his panel, they love even the later stuff equally, and in some cases more so than the early stuff. So that's the inspiration for the video the first time. That's the inspiration for redoing it here, because I have a bit more to say. So let's jump right in, shall we? So as you can tell, I'm not a big fan, unfortunately, for a lot of the latter stuff in so many people's bands and artist discography. So the first one is, bands will stumble, artists will stumble, they're going to make mistakes, exercise poor judgment, they're human after all, they make poor choices. And some examples of that is replacing band members who just don't fit, or the producer that they wanted or engineer is not available, and so that sends them down a path that doesn't work well. So those I'll touch upon again, but those are two examples. Next is entropy. All systems break down, and so it's just part of nature. And tied to that is number 3 is age, the aging process. Your vocal range is not going to be as well or as dynamite as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. There are some exceptions. Bruce Dickinson sounds in many cases even more amazing than he was during his first 2 or 3 albums with the band, which to me is Iron Maiden. I do not like much of the new Iron Maiden stuff, but Bruce's voice is still dynamite. I have to give him that. Next is inspiration fades. So I mentioned in the previous video, I'll mention it again because it's so important and relevant. The poet Shelley said that once you begin to write, inspiration is already on the decline or the wane, and he's so right. Well, if you're an artist and you've been an artist for decades, well, taking what he said, that seems to make that exponentially even worse, because you've been at it for so long. Again, tied to age, entropy, you're going to make poor choices. Your window of opportunity, and I'll mention this later in more detail, is short. For most people or most artists, right? Inspiration is fickle. Talk about the muse in Greek mythology, or some people use that term today, something I believe in. One day you're inspired and the next day you can't, the muse giveth and the muse taketh away kind of thing, right? Anyway, so over time, inspiration will fade. for some sooner than later, and some vice versa. Some will please the audience. That's the next reason why the back half of the catalog may not be as stellar as the first. Wanting to please the audience with what they want. That same YouTube video maker that I was talking about, he mentioned, and rightfully so, and I believe what he believes, that Ozzy continues to make albums, the last 4 or 5, just to please his fans, even though they're not very good, that kind of thing. There's a good song here and a good song there, but overall, the last 4 or 5 albums, even that Black Sabbath album 13, they're not great from start to finish, at least in my humble opinion. So in other words, trying to please the audience, you don't want to stop making music because you want to give your fans something. And I totally get that. This is the other type of please the audience. You want to pander to their musical taste. That's not what I'm talking about, although that's also an element as well, so we can include that. So 2 types of pleasing the audience. One, you want to keep doing music because you don't want to let your fans down. You don't want to retire. You want to give them something because, hey, they're your fans. You want to give them another gift, add to their catalog, you want to add to their library of music that they can pull from, right? And then there's the other kind. You want to please the audience because you're Richie Blackmore. You want to have a pop song because people tend to like pop the most, at least in the current age that we live in. Next, there's the lack of creativity tied to inspiration in many ways. You may have writer's block, right? That kind of thing. The next is constant touring. So fatigue. Fatigue can definitely do a number on you, and that's tied to entropy. The more you tour, the more you wear yourselves out, that kind of thing. Burnout is a part of it, right? The next is chemistry. Chemistry is so important. Chemistry can change in so many ways. You have a falling out with band members or a member. We see this recently with all the schisms with Journey, Styx, Foreigner, Dokken, the Motley Crue, right? The list goes on and on. That's tied to age and, True Colors coming out, that sort of thing. So in addition, band tied to chemistry, band members not staying in the same place. They're coming in and out. Think of Dio, for example. You have these mercenary guitarists, right, or mercenary singers, or mercenary bass players. Usually think of guitarists, right, who play for this artist, then they leave and they come back and they go to another band. And so when you have this musical chairs of musicians who are mercenaries, so to speak, you're going to have a lack of consistency. So that's another reason why. And tied to chemistry is synergy. That can only last so long, right? And synergy is a miracle in so many ways. So if you think about the band Rush, their synergy is just probably the top notch of all bands of all time. I could be wrong, because I guess it helps when all 3 guys are best friends at the same time. All 3 of them are best friends, right? So synergy is so important to that working together so well in the moment, right? Tied to chemistry, right? I mentioned this already. Revolving lineups tied to that mercenary issue, right? Kind of the same thing, I guess. Next, change in songwriting, change in direction. Genesis going pop, Rush going pop, experimenting, going way beyond what your original sound was, whether it be the music itself, going from hard rock to pop, or you get a new lyricist. Someone's left the band, your main songwriter's left the band. What do you do now? Right? So that can have a toll on, back half of your catalog. So I've mentioned this before, you're changing your production. You're changing your producer, you're changing your engineer, right? Here's one. This is a minor one, but still worthwhile to talk about. Change in studio, right? How great were those 2 Kansas albums where they were in Bogalusa, studio in the country. And then you get to the one after Left Overture was still quite good. Point of No Return is fabulous. They started off in that studio, but they had to go somewhere else because of production problems, technological problems actually. But thank goodness, imagine if they stayed in student country, and with those production problems, the album would have been garbage, right? So just even the studio itself can alter how an album sounds and what our expectations of it. Next is dealing with matters of integrity, lack of integrity. So you're just collecting a paycheck. You're making an album to collect money. It's about money. Lack of integrity. You're doing it to chase women. Think Kiss, think Motley Crue. That's a topic that Bruce Dickinson has on, I think it's his first solo album, Tattooed Millionaire. So he's pointing the finger at Motley Crue specifically in that. And of course, Motley Crue bounces back by coming out with a CD called New Tattoo, right? So anyway, a slight feud between the two bands, but I'm going to side with Bruce Dickinson in this case. So collecting a paycheck, chasing women, Kiss, Motley Crue, etc., Poison maybe, Warrant, that kind of thing. Or just phoning it in because of laziness, going through the motions, and it may be tied to money and that sort of thing. Next is, so before I go into something else, those are the reasons why, if you're like me, the front end of a catalog is so much better than the back end. But now let's get into other reasons why a person may like the back half of a catalog and has nothing to do with the music, or almost nothing to do with the music. There's other. So this is really the new stuff that I'm adding to the table. What I just ran through, there was 3 or 4 new things that I didn't have in the previous video. Now everything else in this video is brand new. So why might people like the back half of a catalog? Here's why. They're bored with the front half. It's that simple. So this explains why you go on Amazon and Kiss Alive has 5 stars from the same person who also gives Unmasked and The Elder 5 stars, right? So it's boredom. They're bored with the good stuff, so they make a connection with the back half, which I'll add to in a minute, or maybe a reason why that's tied to this. And so because of boredom, I'll go ahead and say that, they condition themselves to like the back half. So let's talk about that now. Conditioning yourself. You listen to something over and over and over again until you like it. And I've talked about this many times on this channel. I refuse to do that. After about 5 or 6 lessons, if I don't like it by then, I'm not going to. And again, I'll put it on the shelf and pull it out for a 7th time. And by then, definitely, it's going to Goodwill or a friend or last resort in the garbage. All right, so the next is huge, recency bias. Okay, so the notion of, oh, you like the front half of the catalog much better. You have a bias for the classic stuff. It's not for me personally. It's not a bias. It's just my opinion that this is just so much better. And I've given the second half of the catalog time and time again a 4th, a 5th, a 6th listen, and it's still not resonating. But I'm not going to force myself to like something. So again, why do people like LeBron James over Julius Erving or Kobe or Michael Jordan? Is the most compared between the two, even though they don't play the same position. I think it has to do with recency bias. Okay. Anyway, the next reason why people like the back half of the catalog so much is because it's that band as brand mentality. In other words, the Picasso, the Wordsworth, the whatever, your artist that you love so much can do no wrong in your eyes, no matter what. So you're a blind follower. You're in denial about how bad something may be. It's like, I said this before, I'll say it again. As much as I love Rush, they're my favorite band, even I could admit, going to see them for the Snakes and Arrows tour, that while it was a good concert, almost great, Geddy's voice, you can hear that age wasn't perfect, and I wasn't expecting it to be. And yet my friend sitting next to me goes, oh, he sounded just as good as, Fly By Night. Well, are you crazy? No, he didn't. So it's that denial. It's that your beloved can do no wrong in your eyes kind of thing. Again, band is brand mentality. Now, tied to that is you don't want to speak ill of someone. But to my point of view, There's nothing wrong with criticism that is constructive. I think it's disingenuous to not want to say anything ill. If you don't like an album and you review it, you don't like it. But I'll come to that. Finally, or almost finally, with respect to why people may like the second half of a catalog that, in my opinion, is garbage or just bad or mediocre. Usually it's mediocre, it's not garbage. Is they're lying. If they're a content creator, it's because they want the likes, they want the views. Because if they say something bad, then it's going to turn off their audience. And I'm not afraid of that. They want to pander to the crowd. They want people to watch. And again, that's also disingenuous. So when it comes to reviewing albums, I'm not afraid to speak my mind. So when it comes to, let's talk about some recent stuff, right? Uriah Heep's Chaos and Color, I thought was mediocre at best. Judas Priest, Firepower, almost mediocre. There's only 4 songs out of 16 that I like. I've heard all 3 of the new tracks on the new album that's coming out soon. I don't like them. I've listened to them over and over again, and it's still not something's missing. KK Downing. Saxon's last 2 albums, Carpe Diem and the new one, it's not doing anything for me. I find them trite. I find them cliched. I find them going down the same rehashed road yet again. Is that rock and roll? Yeah, but it could be, but there's just something missing, and I can't put my finger on it. I don't know. I don't like it, and why do I have to? The Rolling Stones, AI, and that's something I failed to mention that I have it written down. But why back half of a catalog may not be good, because it's AI. Again, it's integrity, no integrity, disingenuous. So Bruce Dickinson's released 2 songs. I don't care for these either. And what I'm hopeful for is the new Ace Frehley album. He says it's supposed to be just as good as his Kiss solo album. He's got Anton Fig on drums. Okay, great. The new song is okay. I would say it's slightly above mediocre. I was hoping for something, but I haven't heard the whole album. Of these artists that I mentioned, Uriah Heep, Judas Priest, Saxon, Rolling Stones, Bruce Dickinson, Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley is the one there that is the best of the songs that I've heard. So, my point here, I'm not afraid to speak my mind and give a bad review. Again, so you have these YouTubers who, they never give a bad review. To me, that's suspect, disingenuous, and questionable. All right, now, think about it this way. You have people who say, if you don't like the whole discussion, let's talk about Deep Purple. That's one I forgot. I don't like the back half of that catalog, the Steve Morse era. I don't like anything past House of Blue Light. And when it comes to House of Blue Light, I only like 1 song, and that's Bad Attitude. Maybe 2. So I like everything from Deep Purple, from their debut through and including House of Blue Light, if you count that 1 song, but if not, the reunion album, Perfect Strangers. But according to many people, YouTubers who do that music video channels, I'm not a true fan. And their argument, well, Steve Morse has been in the band for 20 years. Doesn't make it, well, so what? Just because someone's been in a band for 20 years doesn't mean it's going to be good. That's false logic. I'm a teacher, so we could have someone on a payroll for 20 years, doesn't guarantee they're going to be a good teacher or well-liked or well-received by the students or administration or by everyone. You're going to have people who like them. You're going to have people who don't like them. That's just false logic. You say, well, they've been in a band 20 years. Doesn't mean I have to like them. Where's the logical connection there? There is none. All right, so false logic aside, the notion of you're getting upset because some of us, like me, don't like the back half of that catalog. There's no reason to get upset. It's an opinion, right? It's preference. Some people don't understand preference. I don't get that. It's preference. But let's take into account Led Zeppelin for a moment. If Led Zeppelin was still around as a band and they had a different drummer, you can't convince me that they'd be as good as them in their prime if you talk about Led Zeppelin 1 through and including Presence. I like Enter the Outdoor. I like Coda, but that's not them in their prime. I could be wrong, but experience dictates that it would pale in comparison. But we'll never know. So but if we look at bands that we do know because they're still around, right? Even today, we look at Rush, we look at Uriah Heep, we look at Deep Purple, we look at Judas Priest. For me personally, Rush, I like their best work, period. Their best run is their debut through Grace Under Pressure. Okay, Uriah Heep, debut through Abominog. Forget Conquest. There may be one or two bad apples in these runs, but you get my point. Deep Purple, as I mentioned, debut through and including Perfect Strangers. Judas Priest, debut through and including Defenders of the Faith. So again, Genesis, Trespass through and including Abacab. And putting Abacab in there for me is kind of a stretch. I like it, it's not great. So again, think about Led Zeppelin for a minute and tie it to the bands that I just mentioned. If Rush ended with if Rush ended their career at Grace Under Pressure, if Deep Purple ended their career at Perfect Strangers, if Priest ended their career at Defenders of the Faith, I would be a true fan according to these people. But because they continued to tour and put out albums, and because, in my opinion, some of the albums past these, there are some that are okay or not great, but okay, that makes me not a true fan. That's ridiculous. That's just ridiculous logic. That's ridiculous thinking. So this notion of if the band continues to put out an album, you're not a true fan if you don't like it. That's just horrible thinking. Okay? Anyway. Now, let's talk about artists and bands who have bucked this trend. I can't think of many. This is where you come in. Please post in the comments what you think. So, there's a band that kind of bucks this trend, but not totally, and I'm talking about Rush. I like Snakes and Arrows. I like half of Clockwork Angels, and I like most of Snakes and Arrows. So you have 3 albums in the back half of their catalog that I'm quite fond of. Are they great? No, but they're definitely better than a lot that came before. Okay. However, if we're going to talk about 2 bands or artists who have definitely bucked the trend, I'm going to go with Motorhead first, and then the next one is even more powerful. Motorhead. When Mickey D joins the band, the first album or 2, it's okay. But after that, he really found his way into the band. The band really started to step up, and there's a lot to like there. So I'm counting Motorhead. I like so much of the back half of their catalog as the front half. Now, is it equally as good as the front half? No, but it is good. The first half of their catalog is phenomenal. It's great. Debut through and including Orgasmatron. But that last half, there's some quite good stuff in there. Again, doesn't equal or rival the front half, but I can say it's better than mediocrity. It's better than mediocre, in other words. Okay, finally, David Bowie. David Bowie has maybe, in my opinion, 4 stinkers in his catalog. He has Black Tie, White Noise, Never Let Me Down, Tonight, and Buddha of Suburbia. Everything else, I just love. Not because he's David Bowie, because I actually like the music. So, for the most part, are there any bands who buck this trend? No. But I could be wrong. So, overall, what is my conclusion? There aren't too many who buck this trend. And again, keep in mind, this is just my opinion. Everything I've said here is just my opinion. I can't remember which member of the Beatles said that they were breaking up because a band can only exist for 8 or so years, and then that's it, because that's the longevity, that's the shelf life, if you will, for any band. And again, it's tied to all those things I mentioned, entropy, aging, all that, and that makes sense to me. So the shelf life of an artist. Is there anything to take away from this? If you're like me and you agree that most bands and artists, it's really the first half of their discography that's the stellar stuff. Well, it's because of all the things that I mentioned, all those elements, aging, synergy, chemistry, personality, all of that. And overall, it's because the shelf life of creativity and artistic genius is very brief. Thanks for watching. Take care now.